In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, Richard Stayman and I, Mr. Mavs Draft, Richard Stayman, we are going to discuss his top 5 prospects in the SEC. We're going to talk about where he ranked them in the preseason and if they lived up to the expectations, and he's also going to give them a grade. Stay tuned. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board and the founder of NBA Draft Junkies. And my co-host for today is Richard Stayman. You guys know Richard, Mr. Clip God, but you seem like you've been kind of chilling out on the clips a little bit.
You know, it's it's been a little bit harder since Synergy kind of capped it. They put this little blob. It's super technical. It's all like a blob link where it's really hard to clip it. You have to like go and scrap the full game, find this thing. It's become super tedious. I've been slacking a little, but you know, I think hopefully that'll change. I took a little Twitter break too, so that combination hasn't been friendly.
I mean, there's a simpler way to do it. Unless you're like, I mean, like if you just go to the player, go to his individual clips, and if you go to like the last 10, and if it's from like the last game, then you'll be able to find like if it's the last 50 clips, and then I upload all of those clips, watch them one by one, and then I pick the one that I want, and then I can trim it down and upload it to Twitter. But
I should have taken notes before going through all these these difficulties.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which way you were doing it, but that's always worked for me. But now Twitter like made it so my videos can't be 2 minutes now because I'm not subscribed to Twitter Blue, even though we're
verified.
We got verified. So it's been weird, but I actually had time this week to put together a couple of video clips. I did one for Braxton Mia. I did one for City Sissoko, posted all his dunks. There's actually one more that I think I did one on Riley Kugel also, and I'm really, really high on him. But let's talk about the SEC, all right? So coming into the season, you had 5 guys that were your top 5 prospects. Who was number 1?
Yeah, from the SEC, I thought it would for sure be Gigi Jackson. The combination of size, he reclassified as a 17-year-old who didn't turn 18 until a month into the season. And I liked the shot enough. I think even at Peach Jam, he was defensive player of the tournament too. So there was a lot. He had come off a really strong summer, and I thought the momentum would carry over. And I didn't expect South Carolina to be good by any means. So like what's happening now with the team and the whole troubles aren't shocking, but the specifics of why there are troubles with Gigi Jackson are a little bit shocking to me, just as someone who wasn't familiar with him in that level before. So he's dropped. He's obviously not my number 1 SEC prospect anymore, but he's actually still pretty close up there.
So like trouble, are you talking about the immaturity issues?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No legal trouble or anything like that, but maturity issues.
I mean, 17 coming into the season, I'm not surprised by it. Someone had kind of alerted me on it before the season. Not a knock on him by any means, but they were basically telling me like this is a kid that is still living at home, I think. But to their knowledge, he was still living at home, never got a chance to really, to go away to college and live in dorms or whatever. And he started the season at 17, which there are some high school juniors that are 17. And they had mentioned that they thought he was maybe sheltered is not the best word to use, but they thought that he may not be as experienced life-wise as some of his peers who may have had to grow up a little bit faster. But I mean, to me, the immaturity issues, that funny, it's kind of wrong for saying funny, but I just thought it was funny. It just shows you how immature he can be because somebody had sent me a message saying that they made a comment about how South Carolina was not properly using him, and then he liked it. And then you go on his Twitter and everybody that had a similar comment about he needs more touches, he needs more shots, he was liking, he was liking the comments there. I didn't see the IG Live video, but I guess he went on IG Live and was agreeing with different people that had negative stuff to say about the situation at South Carolina, which I personally don't always feel sorry for college kids in a sense, because you picked the school. You knew exactly, like, it's the only time that you can pick the school, your teammates, your coach. And of course there's exceptions, like the coach may get fired, somebody may transfer. But for the most part, if you're one and done, you can hand pick your situation. And Gigi went to South Carolina knowing that he was going to face a lot of, a lot of defenses that are geared to stop him. So anyway, what would you give him as a grade?
Yeah, I think it's still a good grade, right? It's like probably a B. I don't think there's any like fatal flaws that he showed. There's some issues, I think, with just the feel for the game. But again, like, he's so young, he's playing a year up. He should be a high school senior right now. It's hard to really penalize him that much. I would still give him a B to B plus. I mean, he had some crazy good flashes, and really at 17 on a bad team, that's what you're looking for, is those nice flashes where he gets going, he finds his rhythm, and he's doing a lot on either end. I think it was almost rare to find him having a great night on both ends, but there were so many flashes of him being a 3-level scorer. I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just when you're that size, that athletic, and he's about 6'9", 6'10", and you're a 3-level scorer, and you've shown those flashes, it's intriguing.
Yeah, it's weird that there's a guy that has shown 3-level scoring flashes, but when you look at the numbers, he's really inefficient. But if you put it into context, maybe his teammates, his age, I'm still high. I would use a top 10 pick on Gigi Jackson. He was someone that popped immediately to me when I saw his film, and I'm still holding him where, in the same range that I had him coming into the season. Right. Who was number 2 on your list of top prospects in the SEC coming into the season?
So I'll preface this with, I didn't fall in love with like any of the rest of the guys on my list. SEC, I felt there were some guys who I was like, well, there's a gamble here. I get the appeal with the other 3, but it's just, I feel this guy has such a better floor given his physical tools, and that was Anthony Black. Also probably some Dallas bias there, just having both of us have seen him in person multiple times here. There's probably some bias there, but 6'7" had guard skills. So I didn't know if he was actually going to be a lead guard or anything, and he definitely showed that he can do that. I think he is somebody who he lived up to expectations preseason, but he blew me away, I think, of what I thought he would be. Like, he was just number 2 in the SEC for me because I didn't like everybody else, but now I'm really sold on him being a guy who I actually think has a good future in the NBA.
Do you think he is a lottery pick?
I think so. I think teams are, my whole thing with him is like, he's way more raw than giving credit for. I think if he consistently gets more and more aggressive, I think we've talked about this in the past, like, he is aggressive, but I still don't think he's aggressive enough in a lot of areas. And if that shot does come along, plus he really has to trim those turnovers. I think he's still learning a lot about how to be a point guard and just run the offense times. And that really was an issue in high school too, where the turnovers, I mean, against, I forget who, I think he played Arterio Morris's team, Kimball. He had like 7 or 8, 9 turnovers against them. And it was really rough. And it's something where we've seen those high turnover games. So when he reduces all or improves all 3 of those things, he's going to get a lot better.
Here's a question for you. So I got this call. I posted about it in my NBA Big Board article. So I got a call from a G League player. He's like, Barlowe. I'm like, what's up? He's like, what's the difference between Anthony Black and Sidy Cissoko? He said, why is one considered better than the other? And I could rattle off their similarities. And he said, well, if you haven't watched Sidy in the last 2 or 3 weeks, then you need to go back and watch his film. And my biggest knock on Sidy was doesn't always get to the rim, settles for pull-up jumpers. And when I watched the film, he was a totally different player. I mean, he is first in the G League in dunks as far as wings and guards. And Sidy was, I mean, he was always athletic. He wasn't dunking like that. So it really made me think, like, what is the biggest difference between Anthony Black and Sidy Cissoko? I know this is off topic a little bit, but what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
So I say this as somebody who's actually had them ranked for most of 2023 very similarly, within 5 spots. I think it's exposure. I think people don't watch the G League. I think that's a big thing. I don't know where NBA teams. I can't really explain that one that much. I think it's just the flair is different for the two of them, and actually, I think it favors Sissoko. But again, it's just that platform. I think people, for whatever reason, have discounted the G League Ignite from being this great program that it actually is. But just because it's not the traditional route that's on ESPN all the time, the most exposure it really gets outside of that one exhibition against Victor Wembanyama has been NBA TV. It's a lot harder to compete against the SEC Network, ESPN, ESPN2, CBS, all these games that are broadcasting Anthony Black, whereas CD Sissoko's seen national TV just a handful of times.
It makes sense, but then it's like it didn't impact Jalen Green, or it's not going to impact Scoot.
Well, they're elite, though. I think it's because they're elite prospects.
And then, well, Dyson Daniels, it's like, was he always that high, or was it just like draft Twitter? I mean, I think it's so early. We really don't know what to think of Overtime and the Ignite so far, even though the Ignite has had success sending guys to the league, but it's still weird. I mean, you had Jaden Hardy was a second-round pick. Michael Foster put up good numbers. I know it's a style thing, and he wasn't drafted. I thought Isaiah Todd put up good numbers the first year, better than guys that played in college that were, I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to take maybe 5 seasons for people to get a really fair assessment on comparing the G League to college. All right, when we return, we'll talk about prospects 3, 4, and 5. But let's talk about the Nissan's Most Electric Player of the Week, which is brought to you by the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria. And do you have a player that you think is the Nissan Player of the Week? I'm going with Drew Timme, and it's more so a career achievement award. I know this is supposed to be the Player of the Week, but Drew has had a lot of really good weeks at Gonzaga. He is their all-time leading scorer, and I want to say he won like his 4th WCC conference in a row. I could be wrong on that, but he has had as close as, at least in this generation, we don't see too many guys stay 4 years, but he has had a great 4-year career. I mean, they might even build a statue for him. So he is my Nissan Electric Player of the Week. Do you have anybody else in mind?
Yeah, I'll go with somebody else who also won their conference tournament yet again. And this is a name you might not have heard since right after COVID, the first tournament since, which is Max Abemus out of Oral Roberts. He helped Oral Roberts win the Summit League, beating internet sensation Grant Nelson in North Dakota State in the finals. He averaged 21 points a game, 7 assists on 43.5% shooting, and on 6 attempts from the line, 94.5%. So he was ridiculously good in that tournament. I still not huge on him personally in the draft, but I mean, it was a great week for him and a great flash for him to get back in that conversation.
Yeah, only if he played well in that combine after he had the big game against Florida, I want to say 2 years ago. And he was at the combine last year. Well, he did a pro day. But man, his stock was extremely high. A lot of people had him as a first-round pick 2 years ago. But anyway, let's talk about the Nissan Aria. And it is electric. It is brilliantly fierce, fiercely elegant, stunningly powerful, elegantly powerful. And it delivers a combination of fierceness and elegance. It is beautiful, but it's strong. It is the perfect SUV crossover. The 2023 Aria packs pin you to your seat power and premium intelligence all in one electric vehicle. It is the all-new, all-electric 2023 Nissan Aria. It is the electric vehicle for people who love to drive. You can find it at nissanusa.com. All right, second segment is Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman. We are talking about Richard's top 5 prospects in the SEC coming into the season. And before we went to break, we talked about Anthony Black. We kind of went on a little tangent there. But did he exceed expectations? Did he live up to the expectations, or was he beneath the expectations?
I think he exceeded my expectations. I think he was somebody who people talked about as a lottery candidate. But a lot of people are like, but let's keep him around 2025. And then, I mean, the Maui Invitational, I think one of the invitational tournaments in November, he exploded, had a couple big games. It was his coming out party. And ever since, he's just been, he's had a higher floor of a bad game than he had before that, and a much higher ceiling of good games since then. So I think he's exceeded the expectations.
Yeah, I had concerns, but ever since Maui, I've kind of kept him in that lottery range. All right, who is number 3? Who's the number 3 prospect coming into the season? Oh, I see you shaking your head. So
this hurts because it's not Brandon Miller. This is where I messed up, because for me, I liked Brandon Miller, but I think I overthought the age. And then also I just wasn't sure how quickly he would translate. I knew he was a dude, but I didn't know if he was that dude right away. Like, so that's, for me, like, my stock changed after the secret scrimmage. I was told he scored 30 points against TCU in 1/2, which is just absurd. So I'm counting before that, like truly in the off season of when I was ranking guys. And for me, it was Cason Wallace. I thought he would be that kind of Tyrese Maxey, which he's not. But, you know, that kind of guard who's pesky on defense, gets to the rim and shoots threes. And, you know, not all of that has exactly been the case, but I mean, at least the threes and shooting, or I'm sorry, the threes and defense have been outstanding. I mean, there's been so many examples of that defensive playmaking. He's more of a high floor player, like a very, very high floor player for me, more than the high ceiling that I was kind of anticipating him being. So it's good and bad. You know, there's more polish to his game, but I don't know exactly if he has like star upside.
Are you going to give him the benefit of the doubt because he goes to Kentucky?
Yes, absolutely. I say that, but like I said the same thing about Tyrese Maxey. I liked Emmanuel Quickley. I think he was an easy target as the high floor, but not everybody is Emmanuel Quickley where like it's very clearly written on the wall. There's a lot more Tyrese Maxeys than Quickleys in terms of like scouting and judging, projecting what's next.
Yeah, I mean, Wallace is probably the guy that is in most people's lottery that is like the quietest prospect. Like, you don't see highlights. His game is actually, from a highlight standpoint, he's not going to give you a bunch of crazy highlights where he's, you know, wowing you with athleticism, and unless you like defense, he's going to be a solid player. Now, did he exceed your expectations, live up to them, or was he a little bit below them?
I think I'd say lived up to him. It wasn't something where like he's constantly floated around, you know, the 8, I would say, to like 14 range. That's been preseason and that's been now. And you know, he's been a good finisher. I was looking up the numbers while I was saying that because I couldn't remember exactly how solid he's been. I feel like he hasn't been bad, but I wasn't sure if he had been actually good. And he's actually shooting pretty well. He's shooting above college average at the rim. So for me, that's a big swing skill. I'd say he's exceeded expectations, like ever so slightly, but at a minimum, like it's one of those things. If you're giving him a grade, it's a B+, A- kind of border.
Okay. All right. Who's number 4?
All right, now it's Brandon Miller. I hate being wrong. So like it pains me. But like, again, that was just my issue, is I didn't know how good he would be, how quickly he would be this good.
You know, he popped to me. Like, he really did. And it's one of those things where, you know, it's like you got to trust your judgment, your first instinct. I mean, and you can be right or wrong. And he popped to me immediately when I saw him. I did think that he settled for too many like mid-range jumpers, which has like totally been taken out of his game at Alabama. They just don't allow it. And then I talked to some scouts, and the scouts weren't as high on him. I remember one particular scout telling me the shooting hasn't progressed like we thought it would. He's older than other guys in his class. He's inefficient. And then other scouts were like one guy actually told me he's number 2 on my board. And then another guy was like, he's 20. And then it was just like so divisive. I still had him like top 10, but I mean, he had like the widest range. And I remember writing so many articles and talking about how divisive he was. And then I heard about the TCU game, and one scout that was like, and he still has him at number 2. He's actually had Brandon Miller number 2 since September. And he told me, he was like, I can send you the footage from TCU. and he's high on Brandon Miller. So of course now, he's like, I told people, I told people, or he told people in a circle. But when you're a scout for NBA team, all your information just, I mean, you can't like post it online. But yeah, he had him number 2 back in September.
So you're
And
telling, oh, sorry, go on.
and he's like, there's so much more to his game that he hasn't been able to show. And I know, at least for me, I did think his mid-range pull-up and his ability to just shoot over smaller defenders was his best attribute. And he's been the best college player in the country, the best prospect, without that being his, with that being taken out of his game. So I think that he is, I mean, I got him solid at number 3, but he could actually move up to number 2 on my board also.
Yeah, that's incredibly high praise too, I think, saying that, because the 1 and 2, it feels like it's always been a lock for as long as we can remember talking about the 2023 draft. Looking at his shot chart, I mean, I don't know if you've pulled it up. He's taking less than 30 mid-range shots. I mean, it's a very analytical shot chart. I mean, there's 3 zones in the mid-range that he hasn't even taken a shot from this year. So
Yep.
to me, that screams, that translates. He's already playing an NBA style shot selection and just like almost system, honestly. And I think for him, it's just how quickly does he adjust to the tempo. It's 6 seconds quicker of a shot clock, but it's not always that. In college, it goes much more into 20-second possessions, whereas in NBA, it's more frequent to have 10 seconds possessions. But I think he's the real deal. I think he's probably one of the safest players, because what if everything doesn't translate? He still has 2 to 3 major skills that he can fall back on and be at a minimum like a high level rotation player. So, and especially at 6'9", 6'8", like he's going to do just fine for himself. There's really no way the dude fails. Obviously, like from on court ability, it should be said.
I even think that once he gets to the NBA, we'll start seeing more of the mid-range pull-ups, kind of like, a Brandon Ingram, where he's just able to elevate over guys. And we might see some mid-post stuff, which was something I was pretty impressed with. I thought he had a little bit more game than he's able to show, and especially in the mid-post. And then he'll need to get stronger, but I think there's a little bit more offensive creativity to his game. All right, when we return, we'll wrap up number 5, and then we'll talk about some guys that may make your honorable mention list. But if you're looking to eat healthy and you don't want to compromise taste, then you have to try a Built Bar, because with Built Bars, healthy is actually tasty. They're good for you, and they are covered with 100% real chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond. I'm not sure how they do it, but again, they're healthy. They taste good. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And the good thing, and starting in 2023, is that you can get Built Bars at Sam's and Walmart. If you want a 13-bar box, you can go to Sam's. If you're just looking for a 4-bar box, you can go to Walmart, go to the pharmacy section, and you can pick up some cookies and cream, double chocolate, coconut puffs. Or if you don't want to get out and you want to continue the old school way, I guess it's like not necessarily the old school, it's like the new school way, but it was the only way to get Built Bars before. You can go to built.com. Last segment. All right, we talked about Gigi Jackson, Anthony Black, Cason Wallace, Brandon Miller, and I mean, I have an idea who's number 5, but who is number 5?
Yeah, so before I say it actually, like, if you've been following me, especially part of this draft process, like, I'm not super high on Nick Smith. I was low on him before the season too. So, I mean, there's probably some bias I don't recognize that is part of this, but I was also torn with one other player. You said we'll talk about honorable mentions. I'll keep that a surprise till then, but it was Nick Smith, 6'5", just brilliant perimeter scorer. It was it's hard not to have him as like a, guy who, I mean, for me, I think he's Lou Williams. That's probably a really good, and it's such a lazy outcome. I get it. Saying like, oh, bench or like, volume score, whatever, Lou Williams, or it's a lot of times reserved for smaller guys, but I do think that he could be primed for like a great career coming off the bench as just a scorer. I think that's probably his best role. So for me, I had him not that high because I just wasn't sure of his guard skills.
The thing that I didn't care too much about Nick Smith was I just didn't think he got to the rim enough. Shot a lot of floaters, and it's a it's a style thing for me. I like my point guard to be like really aggressive, attack, get downhill, and finish. And I mean, he would get to the rim, but he always shot a floater. But on one hand, it makes a lot of sense. He's kind of slight of frame, and if he has a great floater in the NBA, then he won't take as much punishment on his body. Unfortunately, he's been in and out of the lineup, but I think he scored like 24 or more in like 3 of his last 4 games. So he's trending in the right direction. And I'm just impressed with the fact that he's been able to do that while he's been a little bit rusty. I mean, it's not like he's had the same, consistent routine or it's hard to miss, a good chunk of the season and come back and be effective. The efficiency numbers aren't great right now, but I do think that a strong SEC tournament could actually propel him in the top 5, maybe, if he has some really good games. But here's the question: does Arkansas make the tournament?
Yeah, I think so. I'm confident. I know they're kind of on the bubble, but I think they'll be given the benefit of the doubt. I mean, just given the injuries that kind of derailed a lot of what they had, I think they'll get a benefit of the doubt. Then, SEC's been really good this year too.
Should Nick be the point or the off the ball?
I think he's really good off ball. I think the Tennessee game is a prime example of why you don't want him to be the point. He was reckless as a playmaker.
Okay. Do you have him in your lottery? Or are you still a little lower on him?
Right now, no. He's still top 20, but like he's just outside.
Ooh. Okay. So has he exceeded expectations, lived up to expectations, or do you kind of give him an incomplete because it's just not enough games?
Yeah, multiple answers incomplete. And then also, he's kind of been exactly what I thought he would be, where really good score, not that efficient, and just like he doesn't run a pick and roll. If he's running, and also, like you said, if he's going for a pick and roll, he's going to do 2 things, 3 things really. He blazes past into a floater. So like the floater's kind of one he'll try and maybe like reset and kick it out to a shooter, or he'll just go straight, wait. He doesn't wait for the screener, which is always a thing that really irks me. He doesn't wait for a screener to fully get set, take advantage of that pick, and just pop it from 3 with no advantage created. So for me, I just I still have some reservations about him.
Gotcha. All right. So who makes your honorable mention? Like, who's the first name that comes to mind that didn't crack your top 5?
Yeah, and this is for preseason?
Well, actually, so this is for like right now.
Sure. Okay, that changes the answer big time. So the one I was gonna say actually was the preseason guy. He hasn't been really on the floor. I personally don't understand why. He was playing a little bit to start the year, and he was getting blocks like crazy. I was really, really high on Ugonna Onyenso. I was so big on him. I thought he was going to be that big man that Kentucky grooms, but he just hasn't seen the floor very much. So it's not him. For me, I still like Julian Phillips a lot. I think he's a guy who, yeah, the raw efficiency numbers aren't great. Free throw percentage is really good, though, and his feel for the game and effort are really good, and he's got a great frame and athleticism. So it's a lot to build on. It's a great foundation as a freshman. I'm investing.
Before the season, an SEC coach told me that he thought Julian Phillips should be a 2-year guy. He was concerned that going to such a good team that had veterans, he was going to blend in, and he thought that Tennessee was going to be good if he averaged 6 points a game or if he averaged 2 points a game. And his suggestion was, and this is before the season, that Julian does 2 years. He knows he's probably going to be one and done, but he thought doing 2 years and what he thought was a weak 2024 draft and having a enhanced role would make him like a sure lottery pick in 2024. Have you been surprised by his production? I mean, last I looked, he's averaged about, it was either 12 or maybe it was 9 points a game. Maybe 9. I forgot, 9 points a game. The efficiency isn't good, but I didn't think that he would. I mean, I thought I thought him and Anthony Black were 2 guys that were going to average 6 or 7 points per game because both are in different situations. Black is unselfish. I thought Arkansas just had so much talent that he wouldn't have to like put up big numbers to have an impact. Yep. And then I thought with Phillips, because there's so many other guys on the team that can score, and he's a freshman. Yes, he was the highly touted guy. I thought that he'd show flashes here, but he'd have games where, he really doesn't do a whole lot, but he's actually scored more than I thought. I just thought he'd be a lot more efficient.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I also was low on him though coming into the year. I thought he was just a guy who I didn't know what he would translate up from high school as. I was having a really hard time with that, but the efficiency's bad. He probably could. I think he's 50-50. I could see both sides. One, you get what I said, the foundation of that high level wing. Again, that free throw percentage is very real. 82%, 4 attempts a game, and he's playing real minutes. I think that's a foundation for shooting too, but also at the same time, what if his breakout year is in college basketball? It's almost like a Josh Primo situation from 2021, right? He was going to get taken in advance. So you're basically using that early year lottery pick, or you wait for, he waits around and he breaks out, or maybe he doesn't. So I think he's better suited. Honestly, I actually don't even know. He's 50-50 for me.
Who is your biggest surprise? Your biggest surprise freshman?
Man, I think it's Anthony Black. I mean, it's kind of a lazy answer, but I mean, you just said it. Everything you said, I echo completely. Like I really didn't expect him to be this good of a scorer and this consistent of a scorer, really.
I mean, 2 come to mind. I'm a big Riley Kugel guy. I'm selecting him in the first round.
I don't know how I didn't choose him.
So I'd say Riley and then Noah Clowney. Clowney was 4-star recruit. And I just had an agent ask me yesterday. He was like, man, what are your thoughts on Clowney? He's like, we're going after him. And then he was asking my opinion. And I was honest. I said, look, if Noah Clowney came into this season with the same hype as a McDonald's All-American and just had this big buzz around him, and he, as a big, you don't have to put up huge numbers as a big to be considered a lottery pick. And he did this on a team that is going to be a number 1 seed. We'd probably be talking about him as a lottery pick. And he was like, that's a fair assessment. So I mean, Clowney, but I like Kugel. I think he is a first-round pick. I posted about him, I want to say Monday, and I got a lot of mentions from people in Florida that were pretty upset because they do not want any additional draft buzz to and I read somewhere that he said that he's planning on coming back, and I say this all the time. Until somebody tells you this is what you would make guaranteed for the next 3 years, if you're a first-round lock, then it's hard to go back to school. Well, that wraps up this episode. Another great episode. Thank you, the listener, for making the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. Now, for your next listen, you got to check out the Game to Game podcast on the Locked On NBA channel. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. And we are out.